Alright, so in today's lesson, what we're going to talk about is photo restoration. Photo restoration is a big business when it comes to Photoshop, taking old pictures and making them look new again. So we're going to look at the healing tools inside of Photoshop. These are kind of varied and do a lot of different things. You're going to have to experiment with them in order to get them just right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the basics here. I'm going to show you what you're looking to do, and then I'm going to kind of zip through it a little bit. So I'll show you how to fix this, and then I'll fix it real quick, and then I'm going to show you how to add color to an older picture. Coloring older pictures is a little bit harder to do sometimes, but I will give you the basics of it so you can kind of see how it is done. So let's go into Photoshop. In today's lesson, I've added this image of these two ladies walking down the street. You can see that this photo has been damaged pretty severely, and that's going to create a problem for what we're looking to do. Now, it's not impossible to fix. It's just going to take a little bit more time. Now, the tools I want you using today are specifically these two: the spot healing, the patch, the healing brush, so everything underneath the spot healing, and then the clone stamp tool. We're going to utilize these to repair the damaged pixels that we have here. Now before we begin, I want you to grab your crop tool, which is right here. You can see the outer edges of this image are very damaged. The corners are missing in some points, and honestly they do nothing to amplify the picture anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by cropping. I'm going to grab these now black corners and I'm going to drag these in a bit. I want to cut off most of the damaged corners. That's my goal. I don't want to cut off too much of the picture because if you're doing this for a client, they're going to want to maintain the original picture as much as possible. That being said, getting rid of some of it isn't going to hurt anything at the moment. Once you have it outlined like I do here, you're going to hit return on your keyboard and that'll crop out anything that you didn't need. Now the trick here is going to be moving in slow, small movements with your spot healing brush right here, and then coming in with your clone stamp to make bigger adjustments. Now, a lot of this is just minorly damaged, little scratches that if I click and make small adjustments on, you can see that these damages kind of go away, these scratches kind of go away. The smaller your brush is here, the better the likelihood this is going to look okay on the other side. You don't want to use too big of a brush. If you do, it'll start to look pixelated and blurry. So kind of avoid that if possible. So you can see I can make kind of bigger draws and they start to look a little pixelated. So I'll kind of just click, drag. Now I'm going to do this throughout the bulk of this picture. I want you to cover the entire picture, including the background areas. But I'm going to kind of whip through this quickly on the coats using just this tool. So watch for a moment, pause as needed, and you can fix this at your pace. So go through it. Okay, so I'm going to slow down here. Now there are some spots in here that you're not going to be able to fix quickly. Like you can see down here at the bottom, this concrete's pretty much what it is, and it's not hard to go through and get big chunks like this. But if you'll notice these lines in the concrete, they create another problem, and this is where we're going to need another tool for this. Notice her leg here, we'll need a different tool for it as well. Chunks of her shoe. Some of this bag might work. Let me try it. Yeah, that's not bad with that healing brush. But some areas are just too damaged and too recognizable, like up here, in order to just go through using this tool, because when I do that, you see it looks messy and not correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get my clone stamp tool. Now what the clone tool does is it takes pixels from one location and moves them to the next. So if I come down here and I look at this crack in the street right here, I can kind of use this area to drag over pixels from one location to the next to kind of create a seamless look. You want to be very careful with this because your alignment is going to be key. So what I'm doing here is I'm holding Option on my keyboard, Option or Alt on a PC. I'm clicking here to sample these pixels, and then I'm moving over here. Now notice when I click, hold, and drag, there's now a crosshair where I originally sampled. So it's reading those pixels from that location and it's moving them into place where I want them. So I'll do the same over here. You can see it kind of creates that same amount of pixels here as it does here. So let's look at her leg for a moment. You can see that there's highlights and there's shadows on her leg that if I attempt to duplicate are going to create problems. So I'm going to shrink my brush down pretty significantly. I'm going to click on the left side of this leg. And I'm going to slowly kind of move down this leg, trying to get those shadows to continue. I'll do the same thing with the highlights. And you'll see it cleans up that leg a little better than if you did it outside of there. So this can be a little challenging and a little time consuming to make sure that you've got those shadows in the right location without them starting to look a little messy, because that will happen quickly with these pixels when you're messing with this kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that it looks fairly clean. Anywhere you sample pixels from, you're going to need to go back and resample multiple times in order to keep that color how you want it to be. So you'll notice that I keep holding Alt or Option and I keep selecting those same areas again and again in order to create this. You'll notice it in some of these coats that there are lips. So right here you'll notice there's a shadow on this coat. So if I want that shadow to continue, I'll sample it and kind of drag it up a little bit. On the face, you'll notice there's some places that you just can't get right. So I'll sample those pixels from over here on the cheek and I'll kind of move those around. The big spot is up here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold Option, click on this dark shadow, and then I'm going to line it up and I'm just going to kind of run it up the ladder here. Now this isn't necessarily the best way of restoring a photo, but in a short period this will get you kind of what you're looking for. This will get you the basic look, and you can come back and retouch as needed, because that's what Photoshop really is all about. It's about touching and retouching your pictures. So you're never going to finish something in a perfect one motion. You're going to take a couple of motions to kind of clean things up. No artist sits there and draws constantly. They all break out their eraser at some point in order to do this. Every artist uses small brushes as well as big brushes to create their overall look. So that's all I'm doing here. Now remember, when you're zoomed in, some of this may look a little rough, but as you zoom out, it should clean up pretty significantly. And you shouldn't really be able to see much of a difference. You can tell I'm a little crooked in my setup. But overall, much cleaner than it was. I want you to go through this whole picture, cleaning it up. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some color to it. I'm going to go down to my layers and I'm going to add a new layer and I'm going to call it color. I'm going to get my brush And I'm going to have to eyeball these colors. I don't know exactly what color dress she was wearing here. I'm going to assume it's some kind of green, probably a lighter green. And I'm going to paint right here on top of her to color that green. Now when I do that, it's going to give me that green tone, yes, but it's not going to look like it belongs on her. And that's a problem. You'll see this a lot with Photoshop out there in public. People create these terrible looking things just because they didn't adjust the color at all. So I'm going to turn a darker green towards her because it's going to be a shadow from her on there. And when I hit right here where it says normal above your layer, and I go down to multiply or darken, I can see that it applies that color to that coat. So I kind of like the darken. Maybe it's too green. I'll drop the opacity down a little bit so it's not overbearing. But you can see really quickly I'm able to color that coat on that lady. Maybe I want to start looking at some skin tones. Maybe I want to color her leg. I'll do the same thing there. It's a little light. Ooh, she's turning bronzer. That's not good. But there's all kinds of different ways to kind of create this look. There we go, that looks better. And maybe I need to create a new layer for her legs, and I need to make it darker and drop the opacity a little less this time. So it's all about tinkering with it and playing with it. What I want to see is a finalized version of this with all this crap torn out of it and cleaned up. It's not going to take as long as it looks, I promise. And then I want you to come back and I want you to color your image. Remember to use your blending mode of multiply or darken to blend your colors down onto the image. Remember to check your opacity so that it's not obnoxiously colorful like that. Now once you've done this, I want you to take your screenshot, turn it in today's assignment, and you are done. Good job. This is a tough challenge right here, and you've met it. Good job.